Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining me, Jag Singh, on Positive Minds on the Sikh channel. Positive Minds is a program which I like to bring on inspirational and informative people who give us advice and tips on how we can improve our lives. After the show, don't go nowhere, I've got a great guest lined up today for you, but after the show you can download my book, Unbreakable, which is available on Amazon. Unbreakable is my story of the violence and hatred I'd faced as a young lad growing up in East London in the 1970s, and it simply shows how I got from there to here. Okay, so that's Unbreakable, available on Amazon. Please download it after the show. And also, if you want to catch up on previous Positive Mind interviews, you can log on to my YouTube channel, Jag Singh I Can. Simply type in the browser, Jag Singh I Can, and you can catch up on all the amazing guests I've had on Positive Minds. Now, talking about amazing guests, so today I have a guest with me, John Walsh, a filmmaker. John, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jag. Thanks for having me on.
Now, John Walsh is he's done some great stuff. Okay, so when he was 10 years old, right, John, you received a camera, and that camera became your passion, and you actually went on to become a BAFTA-nominated director. So, John, tell me about this camera.
Well, I was interested in Super 8, which is a film format, not a video format, and I was interested in what's called stop motion animation. So the likes of the skeletons in Jason and the Argonauts, where things were moved one frame at a time. So I kept nagging my parents, I want a Super 8 camera. And of course, the cost of that is the projector and the laboratory cost to develop films and so on. And of course, my parents were thinking, as all parents would, is it a phase? You know, will you stick with it? So I did. I stuck with it all through secondary school. By age 15, I was BBC Young Filmmaker of the Year. By age 18, I'd enrolled into the London Film School, which was a post-grad course. So I jumped straight from my A-levels straight into a post-grad course. So there was me, 18 years old, looking like I was 12, mixing with people who were much older, in their mid-20s. I didn't know anyone in their mid-20s. I only had my friends I knew from school days, and then my parents, of course. So to know old people in their mid-20s as I think was quite something. But when I left film school, I started working professionally as a director and a writer, and I've continued that today. In recent years, I've become an author as well. I've just completed my 5th book, and this one here behind me, Escape from New York, the official story of the film, book 3, came out there just gone at Christmas.
Now John, when I was young, right, I couldn't read and write when I was 13. I couldn't read and write because I faced a lot of bullying. I was too busy dealing with the racism that I was growing up around. And I remember one of my uncles, Raja Ram, before he went back to India, he came on a visit, and he gave me a present. He gave me a dictionary. Now, that dictionary had such an impact on me that, you know, those days we had no internet, no phones, no nothing, but that dictionary had such an impact on me, and it made me want to read and write, and it really did help me read and write. Now, just like your camera and my dictionary, I became a writer as well, you know, just like yourself. But what we buy children can have a big impact on their lives. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. Now, you also went on with that camera to meet one of my legends, Harryhausen. Now, you guys out there that don't know this, right? In the older days, Jason the Argonauts, the Monsters, Sinbad, Mighty Joe Young. I mean, a lot of you out there know this nostalgic stuff, right? Okay, we grew up with it, right? And to me, Harryhausen was a legend because he made these monsters, and I can see you got a few at the back there behind you, the dinosaur and the gorilla. I mean, they were my toys, okay? And I understand you met Harryhausen at such a young age. Tell me about it.
Well, I was at the London Film School. I was 18 years old, and I was making my first documentary. And I knew that Harryhausen, even though he was an American filmmaker, a producer, and animator, lived in London. So I got out the telephone directory. That's a kind of clue to how long ago this was. And he was the only Harryhausen listed, and he lived in a grand house in Holland Park in West London. So I picked up the phone, asked my parents first, could I use the telephone? Because, of course, in those days, you need your parents' permission. They would say, ring after 6 p.m., which I did. And there's a picture there you can see of the film director John Landis inside Harryhausen's house there. So I asked Ray, could I make a documentary about his life and work? I did. It was very successful. It got me launched professionally as a filmmaker. And I left film school then and continued working. I stayed in touch with Harryhausen. And in recent years, he asked me to become a trustee of his foundation. And sadly, he died in 2013, age 92. But his legacy lives on. You know, people might not know the name, know Clash of the Titans, as you said, Jason and the Argonauts, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, First Men on the Moon, Creatures. Some of them up here, you can see the recreate animation creatures. Now, big bucks. You know, these sell for £200-300 each. They've been recently recreated by Star Race Toys in Japan, who are sort of top-end toy makers, not but for grown-up children, Jag, like us, you know, who have a bit of money and kind of think, well, I'd love to have had this. Could never have afforded it when we were younger, but now here's the opportunity. But even though Ray doesn't make films anymore, his last film was Clash of the Titans in 1981.
Classic.
Stop motion animation is coming back in a big way. There are lots of advocates out there, Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, you know, Coralina, Nightmare Before Christmas. These are all stop motion animation, simple creatures that are moved one frame at a time. 24 of those frames make up 1 second of moving film. So anyone can do it. You could do it with your iPhone and some pens and pencils on your desktop. So you don't need to be a Hollywood kind of wizard. But of course, Ray Harryhausen was.
And we shouldn't underestimate the hard work that goes into stop motion, because it is hard work, and it involves a lot of skill, a lot of patience. And just for you guys out there, that the pictures we just saw of Ray Harryhausen and John Landis. John Landis is the guy who directed Thriller, for you guys who don't know out there, Michael Jackson's Thriller. So let me get this right, John. All right, you picked up the directory, you picked up the phone, right, at a young age, and you thought, do you know what, I'm going to go for it. And from there to here now, where you're actually writing, I think it's John Carpenter directed Escape from New York, didn't he? Yeah, you've actually been given the opportunity to write the story of the making of these films. I mean, how do you feel coming from that time you picked up a directory, made that phone call to where you are today?
Well, I often think if I didn't have the idea or I didn't find Ray Harryhausen listed, what would have happened? You know, because that first short film I made about Ray's life and work was the door, or the key, if you like, that opened the door to me in television. So I was directing when I was about 20, which is quite unusual for television, particularly in the BBC and other broadcasters at the time. So and I looked incredibly young at the time as well. It was a frustration for me because I looked about 14 or 15. So I know people will think, oh, what a terrible life. But it is hard when you're the director and you're the youngest person on the set and you look much younger than everyone else to get things done on time and on budgets. And I was always amazed that people would employ me as a director. And then I just continued doing it for all of the major channels. I won various awards, 2 BAFTA nominations. I then created my first feature film about the death of Henry VIII called Monarch, and got into feature film production. And in recent years, I did a documentary feature film, which is a documentary that you'd see in the cinema, and it was 100 minutes long, and it's all about politics, which a lot of people would think that sounds very boring, but the film itself, Tory Boy the Movie, which is now on Prime Video, so is Monarch, was really a look at what it's like for a regular person to stand for Parliament. And that was the plan, but of course, when I got inside the project, I found that there was a big scandal in the town where I was selected as a candidate. So all of these doors that present themselves are very much opportunities. And I live by this mantra: I'd sooner regret the things I do than the things I don't. So it's always good to kind of say yes, be positive, forward, than to say, oh no, I don't think so. Because I'm always anxious. I'm always thinking maybe I'm not the right person for this, or they could find someone better. But look, you have the opportunity. It's your moment right now. Do your best. You know, you can't do more than your best. And so I worry about every project, about every book, because I'm a natural worrier. But part of it is because you want to do your best and you want to be seen to do your best. And you're always judged on the last thing you've done as well. So even today, picking out the right shirt, making sure I'm presentable, these are all the small positive steps that make us feel better. And people would say to me, how do you pitch to networks? How do you pitch to film companies? Who do you bring with you? Do you bring your agent? Do you bring your manager? And it's like, no, you bring yourself. But you're not really pitching idea as much as you're pitching you as a person. I got my first series for Channel 5 back in 1998. And I was one of the first small independent production companies they used. And I found out, a few years later, they liked me in the pitch. They liked the idea, of course, but it's really about you as a person, and being likable is as attractive to broadcasters as talent and what you can do. So I used to think being likable was maybe 10 or 20% of it. It's much more like 70 or 80% of it. So positivity and how you talk on these interviews that you do, Jag, in this series, I think is key, because I wake up sometimes and I don't feel like being positive, or maybe I've got a headache because I haven't slept well. But no, I still continue as if things are good today. Let's do something. Let's get something written or something produced. And I think small steps each day is the best way to approach life.
You put that so well, John. You put that so well. And so guys out there, what can we get from John at the moment that can make our lives, change our lives? Okay, so at a young age, right, he thinks of an idea, picks up a directory, phones a director up. Also, he's had to be brave as a young person, standing amongst BBC directors. And, at such a young age, he was on fire. His passion overtook him. He didn't care how old he was. All he knew, he had a goal. Is that right, John? All he knew, he had a goal, and he's going to get there somehow. And nothing was going to stop him. So out there, all you lot, pick up the phone up people, pitch your ideas, make things up, make a story, just like John did at such a young age. And he just kept going, and he's going to keep on going, aren't you, John?
I hope so. Pitching in television is difficult because they can't tell you precisely what they want you to do, because that's not allowed under sort of the fairness rules of commissioning. But you do need to pitch something that's unique, but also that fits into current programming. So you don't want to be derivative, but you also want to do something new and original. So a few years ago, I did a series called Headhunting the Homeless, and in prime time on BBC Two. And it was all about how homeless people who were living rough on the streets, then ended up in temporary accommodation, were being offered jobs by big companies like Marks and Spencer's, Sainsbury's, Waits Construction. And I pitched this to the BBC, and I said, look, when you're normally covering the homeless, it's an issue at Christmas, and it's crisis at Christmas, which is very laudable, but it's quite a flat way to present this problem. And of course, people aren't just homeless on Christmas Day. There's 364 other days of the year. And so it was trying to find a way that would tell a story that reflects our lives. But of course, if we haven't been homeless, how can we take an interest? Anyway, got the series commissioned. It was incredibly expensive. It ran for 3 episodes. I shot for 1.5 years, the programmes. When it went out, it was beating the top rated programme on Channel 4. Only very slightly, but it was the very well-placed wife swap programme where families swap around house and rules and so on. And Channel 4 then headhunted me after they saw that series and said, come over to us and do what you did there over here.
Brilliant.
Because make something which is an old subject like homelessness, which is worthy but doesn't really appeal. If you can make it a ratings winner, come over here and do something, or tell us what we could do that we're not doing. So I did. I went over and did something groundbreaking then at Channel 4. But the reason the homeless show worked, Jag, was because it wasn't really about being homeless. It was about the anxieties we all have on starting our first day of work. And of course, these homeless people would have the additional anxiety of people knowing they've come from a rough sleeper or a hostel background. So we all know that anxiety. Meeting someone for the first time, our first meeting, first day of the job, or even first day at a new school. So there was a palpable tension in each episode as you followed someone as they were about to start at Marks and Spencer's or Sainsbury's or an advertising company. So the key with all of my work is how can you reflect these stories to your life? You don't have to be homeless to recognise the anxieties of first day at school. You don't have to be disabled and live in a disabled community or go to a disabled school to know what it's like to be bullied. My second BAFTA nomination was for a programme on BBC called My Life, Karate Kids, all about the life of disabled children as they try and overcome disability and if you like, hate crime by children for children who are disabled. These are things that hadn't been tried before. On Channel 4, Don't Make Me Angry, the first anger management series for television. I always try and stretch myself. I always try and do something that's new and original, but that will fit within recognised television parameters. You keep the commissioner happy, you keep the audience happy, and within that thin line of that happiness, that's where the awards occur. So I've been sort of to numerous award ceremonies, which is nice, and I bring my parents when I can.
Amazing work. That's some great, amazing work you've done there, John. John, tell me about your upbringing and educational background. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I was brought up in southeast London with my older brother David, who's 2 years older, and I went to just a regular comprehensive school, St Austin's comprehensive school. I don't think that's there anymore. And then after there, I went to local college to do my A levels, and then film school changed everything. So it gave me a different perspective and outlook. So my parents supported me all the way along. I think film school really was the turning point, because there were only two film schools in the UK at the time when I applied. There was one, the National Film and Television School, and the London International Film School. And it was the London Film School I ended up at, even though I was offered a place at the other. And that really was unlike anything else, because it was like a mini film studio where you had a lot of responsibilities to make your film. You had some guidance. You certainly were given the film equipment. But if you got things wrong, you were treated as if you were working in the professional world. So it was really very scary. And I was 18, and I think I was given a bit of a pass by probably some of the staff and some of the older students who saw me as like their younger brother. But it was quite a tough experience. It's known as the Marines of film school. So if you can get into the London Film School and survive it, then it sets you up nicely for when you graduate. So I could record sound, I could light, I could do editing, and I had some idea of this before I went to film school as well. They take people who have some film experience and knowledge. When I was at secondary school, I would read books from the library on old cinema, on classic filmmaking, whatever I could get. A biography of Charlie Chaplin, of Buster Keaton, the Hollywood system, the Japanese cinema, whatever books were in the library, I would get them and read them. And I would always find it fascinating. So the fact that I ended up as a documentary filmmaker, now making books about the making of films, actually is a surprisingly good fit. But I became a sort of an accidental author in 2019 when I wrote a book about Ray Harryhausen. I thought that would be my first and only published book. Now, 5 books later, who'd have thought?
John, you've already given a secret away anyway about how to do this. But if someone out there right now wants to become a director, a filmmaker, or want to write a book, what would your advice be to them, John?
Well, often I speak to teenagers and children and older adults as well at film school. I say, gosh, how do you even start with a book? And there's an old Indian phrase, which is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that's great advice, because if you see someone's career all encompassing, whether it's a sports person, whether it's a filmmaker like myself, an author, it's important to look at the single steps. So if you want to be a filmmaker, read up about films. You have the opportunity to listen to directors on directors' commentaries. We didn't have that when we were watching VHS. But if you put on Goodfellas and you flick it to Martin Scorsese's talk, the directors talking about their films is a type of film school in itself. They can decode, as it were, the why things work. Think of Magician's Secrets. How do you saw the lady in half? How do you do the card trick? They all have logical answers, but they seem magical until you find out the answer. And when you know how a trick is done, you think, I could do that and I could do it better. Well, we'll find out, because there are so many ways now with YouTube and so many aids online that are free that you can find out pretty much how to build a house from scratch. So I say, don't be put off. It is one step at a time. I have a to-do list. I have a desk diary. I make sure that individual but achievable goals. If you make a big list and you don't achieve in a single day, you'll think, I failed.
Yeah.
1 or 2 things in a day. Before you know it, the week is gone. You've achieved 10. So think about passion. If you want to write a book, write about what you know, and then think about what publishers you'd like to go to. One of the rare occasions, suits. So television is such a casual place. You rarely turn up in a suit. If anyone from television comes to you and they're wearing, then you're probably in big trouble. So on awards nights, it's great to be able to go. Comic-Con in San Diego, I've been to a few times as a panel speaker, which is wonderful. 140,000 people were at Comic-Con to see me launch my new Flash Gordon book, my book on Ray Harryhausen. I should have been there for Escape from New York, but sadly, the pandemic that stopped that from happening. But we've been doing lots of online talks. There's an online video playlist on YouTube for the book because there's never enough space. It's a 200-page book. But what's that saying in the film Jaws? We need a bigger boat. I need a bigger book.
John, listen, it's been great having you on the show today. Now, thanks for your great advice. John, if people want to follow what you're doing, catch you on social media, keep up with the great stuff you're doing, or even grab hold of your books, what's the best way for them to do it? Fire away, John.
Well, the easiest way to find me, if you Google John Walsh Filmmaker, it all comes up. You can find my Twitter, which is @WalshBros. You can find me on Instagram, which is John Walsh Filmmaker. And you can find my website as well, which is johnwalshfilmmaker.com or walshbros.co.uk. Lots of information to remember there. Easy, findable person. And for yourself, if you're starting off as a filmmaker, get your social media together. Get it smart, professional. Take a leaf out of other people's social media. Do things which are positive. Of course, no hate. Of course, no sort of outlandish behavior. These are not the right places. And as an employer, I also look at people media feeds. So don't do things that you wouldn't want your friends or family to see on socials.
John, listen, very quickly, we're running out of time, but when you was chosen, right, to write the making of Escape from New York and nostalgic film Flash Gordon, how did you feel? How did you feel being chosen to do that after all those years you've been working hard, man?
Oh, because, from renting the VHSs and watching them over and over, I didn't get the chance to see either film in the cinema. To be able to kind of speak to the filmmakers, have access to the official archives of the studios to see what photos have never been printed and all of those stories. Who could have played the lead in Escape from New York? And I tell you, it wasn't going to be cool. It was going to be Charles Bronson from the Death Wish films. So all of these secrets, it's lovely. Yeah. So fans love to hear all of that sort of information, what could have been, what should have been, and in some cases, what be to come.
John, listen, you are going to go from strength to strength. And listen, I really have appreciated you coming on today and sharing your great advice, man. Listen, may you go from strength to strength, John. And listen, one more thing very quickly. What have you got to say to people out there? What's your passion, John? What keeps you going?
Look, believe in yourself. I know a lot of people are on social media and a lot of it's quite superficial, which is great. You need to be presented well. That's a good thing. But there needs to be something else. So, have a passion, continue with it, and not at the detriment to maybe working. You don't have to work or do professional. You can do both. And I'd say if you have a passion, stick with it because, I did. And I got a lot of knockbacks and we had a half hour about how you deal with rejection. If I had a book about rejection, it'd be bigger than any of the books I've written here. We learn from all those moments. Every no, every rejection is a step towards a yes, towards a positive. So there's that. I've got another no under my foot. I'll step forward, perhaps to another no and another one. They are all steps towards yes. This is coming.
Superb. John, listen, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on Positive Minds, John.
My pleasure, Jag. Absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you.
Superb. So there you go, guys. At 10 years old, John got a camera, right? And this camera became his passion, and he didn't just stop there. He went on and he became a BAFTA-nominated director. He's written books, and I'm just gonna, as I said, he's going to go from strength to strength. He's not going to stop. And the same thing applies to you guys. Pick up the phone, pitch those ideas, think of something, think of an idea, and make it happen. Listen, guys, thank you so much for joining me, Jag Singh, today on Positive Minds. Until next time, keep smiling and keep moving forward. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.